Hey everyone! Today I have with me Christopher Lochhead. He is a #1 best-selling Amazon author and top 30 rated podcaster who now hosts the podcast Follow Your Different. He's been an advisor to over 50 venture-backed startups and a former 3-time Silicon Valley Chief Marketing Officer. And he's the co-author of 2 best-selling books. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Thanks for having me, Amanda. I'm stoked to be here.
Yeah. Well, so how did you imagine your career path being back when you were in school? Could you have imagined all of this? I mean, you're so accomplished.
Well, that's kind of you to say. My mother will appreciate hearing that. No, I had no idea. You know, when I was a kid, I was, well, I still am, hopefully, super creative. And so when I was a teenager, I wanted to be in a band. I wanted to be a musician. My idols were that. And I always had an entrepreneurial streak. I had a paper route when I was 10 years old. And, I grew up in a very, if you will, modest family, modest environment. And so.
A paper route? What's a paper?
Yeah, exactly. We used to have these things called newspapers. And people used to bring them to your doorstep. And because it was a pretty... let's see, I'll keep it clean. So I'll say crappy job. Let me say it that way because you had to get up early. And I used to have you have these paper bags and they were so heavy because the paper, paper's heavy. As a young teenager, I'd have these sort of bruises, these sort of line bruise marks.
You're talking to someone that distributed 40,000 magazines.
Yeah. So, So yes, I was entrepreneurial from a young age, but to answer your question, I wanted to be, I wanted to be a rock star. I want to be somewhere in between Joey Ramone and David Lee Roth. And, so being in business was never anything that I had really thought about.
Well, so then what was it like to start your first company at only 18 years old? I mean, was that your way of becoming a rock star?
No, that was my way of paying the rent. I got thrown out of school at 18 because my grades sucked. It turns out if you get D's and F's long enough, they tell you you can't come back. And so I was in a band, and my mom got me a job at a hospital working as an orderly. And so, being in a band's a hard thing to do. The drummer's always quitting, and the bass player's always chasing his girlfriend. Or, there's always BS, right? And so I had this job as an orderly. Well, I think like a lot of people, for me, entrepreneurship was not just a way up in the world, so to speak. It was a way out. I didn't have any other options other than manual labor. Nobody was going to bet.
Well, so tell us about that journey.
And so if I wanted to, to quote my mother, make something of myself, I was going to have to do it. Nobody was going to bet on me. And nobody was going to give me an opportunity other than, a manual labor opportunity, because there was nothing in my background that would suggest that you should bet on me.
Well, if I remember correctly from Best Year Ever Blueprint, which was my #1 takeaway from you, was that if you've got to bet on yourself, nobody else, don't wait around for someone to bet on you. You've got to bet on yourself.
That's right. And at least it's been my experience that if you bet big on you and you show some traction, you show some success, that was a smart decision, then others will bet on you. I have had people take a chance on me when they shouldn't. I have had people reach out and support me throughout my entire career. I mean, most recently becoming an author and a podcaster. I started from zero as an author and a podcaster after having had, a very successful career in business that spanned the better part of 30 years. And it's a crazy thing to start at the bottom and be a nobody after having achieved some level of success. And so the aha around that is other people make you successful, but you've got to give them a reason to help make you successful. You got to show up. And more importantly, you got to train yourself in how to produce massive results. And if you're somebody who can be counted on to produce massive results, then other people are going to want to do business with you. Other people are going to want to hire you. Other people are going to want to buy your stuff. Other people are going to want to be around you, collaborate with you, partner with you. learn from you and with you, and et cetera.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so how were you producing results? You started your first business, and where did you have your first, aha moment where you're like, I'm onto something?
Well, actually, I didn't have the aha. Now, this is the other thing, you have to be smart enough to know there are these, and I'm not an overly religious person per se, but there are moments in life where God taps you on the shoulder and goes, "Psst, hey, over there," or, "Hey, pay some attention." And so, I was working as an orderly, and the band would do well, and then somebody would quit, and, it was all fits and starts. And my buddy Jack came to me and said, "Hey, I want to start a company, and I want to do it with you." And I said, "Well, what are you even talking about?" And he was working in the computer industry at the time, and the personal computer was taking off. And I said, "Look, I don't know anything about technology. Math was over for me in grade 3. I don't know how to tie a tie. I don't own a suit. I don't, what do you?" And he said, "Look, you handle the sales and marketing. I'll handle the technology, and let's go get after this." And we did. And so we started a company at the dawn of the personal computer revolution, and we went from there. And I, like a lot of entrepreneurs, had no experience, no money, no relationships, and no reason you could ever think that I'd be successful. But sometimes in life, you just jump off the high dive and start swimming.
Well, how did you find the courage to do that?
Here's the interesting thing. Um, when you've got nothing to lose, you've got nothing to
Mm.
lose. And so it was absolutely terrifying. I mean, I get one of the first sales calls I ever went on. I had bought a cheap suit, and I was wearing this cheap suit for the very first time. And Jack had to teach me how to tie a tie. And we go on this meeting with this woman who was an entrepreneur and CEO, and a very powerful woman who could both be a customer and refer us business and so forth and so on. And we're sitting in the meeting, and she keeps looking at me, but not in a good way. And I didn't know why. It was kind of making me feel uncomfortable. And anyway, we get out of the meeting, and Jack looks at me and goes, "Oh, crud." The tag from the suit was still on the sleeve of the suit. And so every time I move my arm
Oh, no.
or whatever, this tag on the arm of the suit was there. And so, of course, I looked young. I was 18, 19 years old at the time. I was 18, beginning of the business. And so clearly I was young. And she immediately knew that this was the first time I put on that suit, and she was probably not dumb, and probably figured out this might be the first time I ever wore a suit to a business meeting, which I think it was. And we didn't get any business from her. And so, as basic as that. And so I had ongoing, relentless failure, as I think a lot of us do. But the flip side of it is failing is also called learning. And so you learn, hey, listen, if you're going to go in a big time meeting that's important, you better have your stuff together, and you better look the part, and you better act the part, and you better be able to execute, and you better take that tag off the suit.
I think there are a lot of listeners out there who could feel that, they wouldn't even know what to do first if they were in a meeting like that, such a high pressure experience.
Yes.
And yeah, so you're going to fail the first couple times, but that's okay. And then, once you've been there, once you've felt the room, you're like, okay, I've got this. I could do this the next time.
That's right. And you get better, and you apply yourself, and you learn, and you get better at doing your homework. I mean, I had a similar experience just a little further along, where I was just BSing my way through stuff, particularly technology oriented stuff, because I didn't know anything. And I was in a meeting with a chief information officer, and I was trying to BS my way through it. And he started to ask me some questions, and it didn't take very long for him to figure out that I was full of crapola, and he exposed me for it. And I felt 2 milli-inches tall, and humiliated, and angry at him, but truly more angry at myself. And then I had another aha, which is sort of along the same lines, which is, you know what? That's never going to happen again. I am going to train myself. I'm going to get prepared. I'm going to study. Traditional education wasn't an option for me. And so I I studied the industry religiously. I read like a madman. I got coaching from Jack, who was, technical, and I got my stuff together, and I made a commitment that even though I was never going to be a technical person, because I was in the technology industry at a strategic level, I was going to understand the technology, and I was going to be able to, at a strategic level, not at a how do you write lines of code level, because that wasn't an option, but at a strategic level in terms of understanding how all the stuff came together and why it was valuable and what all the components of various technology things meant and why they were important. I was going to learn that in a meaningful way, and so that I could, at least at a strategic level, stand toe to toe with any chief information officer in the world. And I went to work. I trained myself to be that. And it was that failure experience and that humiliation that led me to that.
Yeah. So you needed someone to call you out for you to start saying, okay, he's right, and I'm going to learn this.
Yeah, look, there's some real value to fake it till you make it, for sure. And that sits right next to do your effing homework.
Mm-hmm.
Don't show up in a meeting with a senior executive, a seriously accomplished person, and, drool on your shoe. You got to have your stuff together. You got to be worthy of being in that meeting. And it doesn't mean that just because you're young or just because you're inexperienced, that's okay. People understand that, and people knew, I was a kid.
My big thing is show up with a notebook too. Show up with a notebook, get ready to be present, take notes, get takeaways from that experience. But I can't tell you, running College Magazine, we interview hundreds of college students. And I can't tell you, we get a handful of students that are, top of their class, that are, they've done their research. They can point out articles that really move them on the site and share that information with us. But then we have students that show up and they're kind of like, I can see them almost like clicking away on the site to tell us, oh, this is what I read, because they didn't do their research. And it's so obvious. And, but when you do your research, it goes a long way and it speaks volumes.
Yes. And know who you're freaking talking to.
Mm-hmm.
Today it's easy. You can Google somebody, you can look at their LinkedIn profile. Some meaningful percentage of accomplished people have written things, they've been quoted in them. Do your homework, understand who you are talking to.
And you'll stand out because most people aren't doing their homework. Oh, yeah. Sorry.
and understand the topic.
Yeah.
Right. And you don't have to know everything about the topic. And we can talk about ways of listening and good questions to ask that maybe won't get you jammed into a corner if you want, because I've been jammed into every corner you can imagine. But do the work.
Okay, wait. So what's your secret question to asking the question and not appearing that you don't know anything?
So the first thing I would say is understanding that, at least at a high level, there's two kinds of questions. And one is an open question and the other is a closed question. And asking a closed question in an ignorant way is the easiest way to get into trouble. So open questions are much more powerful. They also elicit longer responses. And so become a master at open questions. So the sort of the paradigm to play with is ask an open question. So, Amanda, nice to see you today. Looking forward to getting to meet you. Tell me a little bit about your business.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your strategy. Tell me about what you'd like to accomplish in this meeting. So those sort of big, open, tell me about, I'm curious about type questions will elicit a big answer. Because if I say, Amanda, tell me about your business, chances are you're going to start talking.
And I could speak for days about that. Well, so tell me about what it was like being part of a software company like Mercury Interactive and getting acquired by HP.
Well,
Did
Mercury,
you like that open-ended question?
Beautiful, right? And then here's what you do. So you ask that question. I'm now going to go say a bunch of stuff, right? I may talk for a while. And to your point on note-taking, as the person's talking, start jotting things down.
Mm-hmm.
And you might find that sort of, and I don't say this like to be overly structured, but as a paradigm to sort of play with. Open question, other person talks, you jot some notes down, And as you're jotting notes down, you may be jotting things down that have some specifics. So those are closed questions. So I'm going to say some stuff. I'm going to talk about maybe the culture of Mercury and how much I love the people and how much ass we kicked in the market and how fun that was and the troubles and tribulations that we went through. And, I'll say a bunch of stuff. And then you might say, okay, so how much again did you sell the company to HP for? That's a closed question.
Mm-hmm. How much did you sell the company to HP for?
4.5 billion.
Oh, just 4.5 billion.
Yeah. Making Hewlett Packard my favorite company of all time.
Yeah. How did you make that happen?
Well, it's a long answer, but I'll give you the short one and then you can tell me how much you want to drill into. The reality is we designed a category, a company, and a set of products at the same time. And we were able to execute across all those dimensions, category, company, product / technology, in such a way that we became an incredibly unique asset in the information technology industry. And we were a high growth company in a very unique, and I'm going to use this word on purpose, position. And so Hewlett Packard wanted to get their hands on our products and technology, on our people and business approach, because we were an early pioneer in the subscription model of software, which we can talk about if you like. And we had designed a new category in information technology and specifically enterprise technology for running business, running IT like a business. And that idea, that category that we were creating and beginning to dominate was a high growth space, a high growth niche that HP wanted to have the dominant position in. We had kicked their ass in that category because we were the designers of it and they were following us. And to some degree, they decided, A, this is a big space we want to be the leader in. B, we can't beat them, so we'll buy them.
Well, if you had to break it down for some of our non-techies listening in, what does a company like Mercury Interactive actually do? I know you've talked to me about it. If you want to break it down for our listeners, how can they best understand what need you fulfilled?
Yeah, so the simplest way to think about it is businesses have software applications that run their business, whether it's the website and selling things on the website, or the order management system, or the inventory system. By way of example, my podcast is sponsored by Oracle NetSuite. NetSuite is the platform for running businesses in the cloud, so accounting, distribution, manufacturing, sales, etc. Right? So businesses have to have these applications or they don't run. Now, IT's job is to deliver those applications and capabilities so that customers can buy things on the website and accounts payable people can pay bills and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the IT organization's job is to deliver a set of technologies and applications so that the business can run. However, pre-Mercury, there wasn't an integrated suite of technologies for IT to run and manage itself. And so we did this thing called BTO, Business Technology Optimization, which is a suite of technologies that allow IT to do that. Our mantra was what we called run IT like a business. So just like NetSuite is a suite of applications you use to run your business, in bigger corporations, you need a NetSuite-like capability for running the quote-unquote business of IT. And so we became one of the most strategic vendors to the information technology organization of typically large global 2000 type companies.
Wow. Well, so fast forward to today, I'd love to hear what a day in your life is like as a podcaster and best-selling author, speaker, and advisor and investor to Silicon Valley startups. What does your day look like? I mean, I think that there are listeners out there that are like, well, what do you do after you get acquired by HP and you've killed it? Did you peak? I mean, I don't think you did because obviously you're killing it again in this new space. So what's a day in your life like now?
So, I peaked at that. If you said there's a mountain called be the CMO of a successful tech company, I did that 3 times and I think I climbed that mountain and, so I achieved what I wanted to achieve there. And I retired from that at the age of 38. I started at 18, ran like a madman to 38. And that's when we sold Mercury. And I punched out. and I took some time off. I was pretty burnt out. And I used to travel, Amanda, 200,000 to 400,000 miles a year on a plane. The companies that I ran marketing for in the technology world were all global companies. We were talking a little bit earlier before we hit record. I spent a lot of time in Israel, and lots of other places. So anyway, I took a little bit of time off and sort of hit the pause that refreshes. And I also had this dilemma to face, and it's the greatest problem. And I hope all of your listeners have this. This is the problem that I wish on everybody, which is you get to the top of the mountain. You had a level of success both on a personal level and on a financial level that says that you never have to worry about making the rent again. And you can literally do whatever you want with the rest of your life. And so the answer to your question is, I wake up in the morning and do whatever the hell I want to do that day. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to worry about money, and I don't work for anybody. And so I can do what I want. Now, that is a fun place to be, but it can also be a little bit of a crisis. And I say crisis in air quotes with a happy face next to it, because it's like, well, now what do I do with myself?
Mm-hmm. So it's like you're living the dream, but do you still have that purpose that drives you?
That's right. And that can cause an existential challenge. And it has a couple times for me, even recently. That said, I'm pretty clear about it. I want to make the biggest difference I can make in the world in the areas in which I think I can make a difference. And I've tried lots of different things to make a difference. And there's certain areas I make a difference, and there's certain areas where I clearly don't. So I focus on areas where hopefully I'm the most valuable. And how to make it. The reason I write and podcast is because those things are highly scalable. And so I can make a difference to many, many people and hopefully many, many companies in a way that I can't as an individual contributor. So I do that, and I love it. So A is make a difference, and B, have a very good time. And some of us grow up feeling guilty about wasting time, or some of us feel guilty about having fun. And you hear a lot about hard work, and look, hard work's important. And I did and do work hard, although I don't work hard the way I used to work hard. We can talk about that if you like. But for me, life is really about A, making a difference, B, having a very good time. And the third piece is doing those two things with people and in places that I love.
Wow. It just sounds like you're super lucky, but you worked hard to get to that point. I would love to touch on, your message in your podcast. What kind of wisdom do you have for college students about following their different?
Yeah, thank you for asking me that question, Amanda. Here's the big aha, and it really is the dream in my life. My dream is that more and more people focus on what makes them exponentially different as opposed to incrementally better. We live at a time where it's easy to get caught up in incrementalism. And in some ways, and I don't mean this in a pejorative way, I value education tremendously, even though I don't have one. The reason I don't have one wasn't because I made a choice. It was because it wasn't a viable choice for me. I have 5 or 6 or 7 diagnosed learning differences, from dyslexia and dyscalculia and ADHD. And not that long ago, I figured out I had this thing they call executive function disorder, and I'm on the spectrum of bipolar. And so I have all this stuff. I call it I'll just say dysphalia on this podcast. And so all that means is education wasn't an option for me past 18 years old. But that said, I'm a huge proponent of education. And there's something I think that's really important. In a lot of ways, the greatest educations, the greatest teachers that I have had, whether they were school teachers or mentors and teachers since I've been in school, because I've had many teachers since then, is while they teach you specific things, for sure, and learning specific things is important. If you're learning to be a heart surgeon, there's a whole lot of specific things that you need to get figured out, right? And in addition to that, the greatest teachers teach us about life. The greatest teachers teach us how to think. You know, we've had Bill Walton, the legendary NBA Hall of Famer, on my podcast twice. And he says that John Wooden, his coach at UCLA, basketball was a mechanism for teaching them about life. And so I think learning how to think is really important. And I think the most important skill and the most important thing that we can think about is, how do I design a legendary life?
All right, Chris. Well, so tell me about the object that reflects your passion.
So, you know, first of all, I'm not a huge object guy, but that said, it's a fallacy when people say that things can't bring you joy. And so the object that I would share with you is my home. My wife, Carrie, and I built our home. We live in beautiful Santa Cruz, California, in a wonderful neighborhood surrounded by, wonderful people. We know the vast majority of our neighbors. We have many friends in the neighborhood who are a few blocks away or next door. Our next door neighbors are dear, dear friends. We actually share a fence, and there's a door in that fence, so we can come and go in each other's yards. And we built our home. And there's a special joy in building your house. You know, you hear horror stories that it's the worst thing for a marriage or this or that. Building our home was a labor of love for us. And so our home provides me almost, all day, every day, tremendous joy. It's my happy place. My wife's here. We both work from home, so we spend a lot of time together. I'm 2 blocks away from my favorite surf break. We have a wonderful garden. We have 8 hens as pets, and they're our daughters. We have 2 kitty cats. I love to sit in our garden, and we installed a super ding dong Wi-Fi system, and so the Wi-Fi in the garden is as good as it is anywhere in our house. And so I sit in the garden and work on my computer, and I have the chickens running around and playing and wanting to get held and cuddled, and we grow all this food, and we share our garden with a group of our friends. And so it's probably a longer answer than you wanted, but creating a space that you love and an environment that you love that empowers your life. I walk around our house and our property every day, Amanda, and I go, I don't know how the F this happened in my life, but being here and sharing that with Carrie and our friends and family is just a huge source of joy in my life.
That's beautiful. You painted such a beautiful picture too of your house and the hens and the garden. I mean, I hope that you'll share some pictures. Maybe we can include it on the blog.
Absolutely. And you're always welcome to come for a visit. And you can even take home some eggs.
What a wonderful parting gift. Well, I mean, hey, I'd like to catch some waves with you. That sounds awesome.
Are you a surfer?
Mm-hmm.
Atta girl. Let's go surfing together.
Yeah, I can catch those lefts and rights. I mean, yeah, I'm pretty beginner, but I can catch some waves.
Okay, well, I pretty much suck, so we'll be just fine together.
Awesome. Okay.
Enthusiastic, sucky surfer.
Exactly. It's enthusiasm because you have to get back up. I mean, every time. It's very humbling.
Yes. And once I heard this, a dear friend of mine told me this early in my surf career, because it took me 5 years to suck. I mean, it's a very challenging thing to learn.
I'm only like 1.5 years into sucking. So I have got a 5-year journey ahead of me.
Exactly. And now listen, I am now today a solid, what I would call intermediate longboarder. And I'm good with that. I can go out and catch 25 waves in a session and have a good time and feel great. And that's, and talk about joy. That's surfing. And the amazing, there's 2 shapers I met who made custom boards for me that made it a lot easier for me to figure surfing out. And so surfing and the surfboards are that's a huge source of joy as well.
Yeah. Well, I want to leave us with one last question. What career advice do you have for college students today? I'm sure your time at Mercury, you work with a lot of young people. I would love to know, what kind of career advice do you have for them?
Yeah, so a couple of things. Number one, the likelihood that whatever is in your mind about your future career, the likelihood that it doesn't turn out that way is very, very high. And that's okay. In a lot of ways, success is about failing in the right direction. I had a conversation this morning with a dear friend of mine who's had a very successful career as a lawyer. And he's now gotten to a place where he's like, you know what? I don't think I want to be a lawyer anymore. Right.
Mm.
So even in professions like that, I have a really good friend who's a pediatrician, and she decided after, 2 decades of being a pediatrician, she wanted to go do something else. So what I would say to you is, it's probably not going to turn out the way it is in your head, and that's okay. Success is about failing in the right direction. And the second thing is, no matter what, train yourself to be a legendary result producer. Train yourself to be the person that other people want to be around, that other people want to have on their team because you produce results and you do it in a powerful way, and you're a great person to partner with and collaborate with and get stuff done with. Um, and and while you're doing all that, be open. Be open to those moments where, whether you want to call it life or God or the universe or whatever you want to call it, taps you on the shoulder and they go, "Psst, hey, over there, man. I didn't know that I was going to become a CMO, right? I was just drawn to marketing, and somebody else actually saw the potential in me and gave me my first job in marketing was head of marketing for a publicly traded software company. And so I didn't know that was going to happen. I was on a different path at that point, and that opportunity presented itself. And luckily, I was smart enough at the time, I was 27 years old, to realize, hey, you would be a moron if you didn't seize this opportunity to run marketing for this publicly traded software company. And I failed at that, by the way. But I went for it anyway, and I failed, and I learned, and I went on to the next one, and I was, et cetera. And so be really open. And the other big thing I would say to you is, there's this old Hebrew expression: if you lie down with dogs, don't be surprised when you get fleas.
Mm.
And the flip side of that is we become who we hang out with. And so hang out with the most legendary people that who are your peers, who are your age group, who are, if you're still in school or if you're in your first job or early in your career, seek out the people that are your peers that are the most legendary, because they will take your game up. We had Andre Iguodala, MVP of the NBA Finals for the none other than the Golden State Warriors, the greatest basketball team in the league today. He was on our podcast, right? And he left the 76ers, where he was the star of the team, and he's on the Warriors, and he comes off the bench. And the reason he wanted to be on the Warriors was because the Warriors are a team of all-stars. And so I would rather be the water boy on the Warriors than the starting center for, the Timbuk nobodies. And so surround yourself with other legendary people, because we become who we hang out with. And those other people will inspire us and motivate us. And also, frankly, there's dynamic tension there. If you're hanging around with superstars and you're starting to suck, you're not going to get to hang out with those superstars for very long, because they're not going to tolerate you sucking. You'll get voted off the island, right? And so be very thoughtful about who you let into your life and who you let into your brain, because those people, in a lot of ways, set the bar and are very formative. Another one I have for young people, Amanda: who are you dating? Introduce me to your boyfriend, and I'll tell you how great your life is. Because if your boyfriend is an awesome guy on an awesome track who's a real human being and is a result producer and he's a gentleman and he's thoughtful and he's caring and he's loving and he's strong and he's going for it, then I know what kind of person you are. If you're dating a moron, you're a moron, right? And our spouse, our partner, our boyfriend, our girlfriend, by definition, becomes the most important person in our life. So you show me your boyfriend or girlfriend or spouse, and I know what I need to know about you. So what am I saying? Be insanely thoughtful about who you surround yourself with. Legendary people hang out with other legendary people, and morons hang out with morons. I was talking to a friend of mine about this recently, right? It's like, who you make people with if you're going to have children, that's like a very big decision. And you don't find, PhD students at Stanford generally making people with morons. Smart people tend to make people with other smart people, right? And so whether it's your spouse, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, or just the tribe that's around you, be very thoughtful about who you're hanging out with.
Well, I really hope that we didn't cause like a million breakups after this podcast. Maybe just a couple that really needed to happen. But I agree. And I think that I hope that all of our listeners are going to take that to heart and really think about who they are hanging out with. And that's my takeaway from today, is for everyone to go and think about who they're hanging out with and hang out with legendary people. Find those people. And when legendary people attract other legendary people. And like Chris said, if you're not living up to that level, you'll know it. And so the other thing I wanted to leave everyone with was to check out Chris's podcast, Follow Your Different, because if you love the wisdom that he gave to you here, you're going to love the wisdom that you're going to get from his podcast. And I hope that, the experience here can be exponential by you going and listening to his podcast as well. Well, thank you guys so much for listening in. Thank you, Chris, so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Amanda. It really is my pleasure.
Yeah. And everyone, just remember, when you speak your passion, doors open. I really, truly appreciate you listening to the show. Be sure to check out the show notes and reach out if you have any questions. You can check it out at findyourpassioncareer.com. You can email me at amanda@findyourpassioncareer.com. If you have any questions for future guests, I'd love to hear them. And I'm really excited to help you create an intentional career journey and succeed. All right. Thank you, everyone. Bye.